I do not make, for me, the differentiation does not exist. And that happens in course of practice of whatever thing that you are practicing. Fueled in me a conscious desire to push, to really tell the story, that tell my experience of how I had experienced the Naga sadhus, and to tell the story of them in a totality, in a more rounded way as I had experienced. So that's what led to Bhasmang.
You are a journalist too. And this is my belief because I started as a journalist as well. I think people who consciously get into journalism are souls who are in perennial search. They don't even know what they are searching. And sometimes people find the medium.
You are photographing let's put it in a very rudimentary way, you're photographing a beautiful woman. And suddenly a gust of wind comes and a particular hair just blows across the face, creating a perfect foil to the perfection of the face. And it enhances the beauty of the face manyfold. Where does that hair breeze come from? Certain politicians who I have photographed at a very young, at the initial MP, the first time MP state, and I knew looking at them that they will be a cabinet minister. This person is headed to be there. And it has happened. So, my impressions, same thing happens with actors. Actors, it happens reverse most of the time. Ashik da kar dur sunida, bulle shaye kenda. Now, Ashik da kar dur sunida, it's a beautiful term, that the path of a lover is a very different path. Bulle Shah says. Now, it goes into a very different trajectory. So that's exactly that, a photographer, the path sometimes is very different from what are the visual milestones of that path.
Namaskar. Hello and welcome to Shabd Vishwa. This is a series of conversations that we are curating with artists, performers, writers, and literateurs of our time who are capturing the moment in its full receptivity. Today in conversation, we have Bandeep Singh. Bandeep Singh ji has been a photographer for over 30 years now. He's associated with the India Today group, has won numerous accolades, and has held photo exhibitions for some of his personal projects. Most importantly, Bandeep ji is an artist of our time who is so deep in spirituality and so deep in the meditative process of putting out a photograph through his lens that it's extremely important that we know the mind behind this genius. Thank you, Bandeep ji. Thank you for coming over.
Thank you.
Welcome to
Thank you.
Shabd
Thank you
Vishwa.
so much. Thank you for having me here.
30 years is a long time, especially because you have taken up a thing and you really continued to do it. Many people lose interest, many people lose their passion. But when one looks at your body of work, Bandeep ji, right from where you started, the way you explained in another podcast about that lady who was, sprawling grains on a very misty kind of an evening, filled with that golden colors of evening, to what you are doing today is a huge arc. But one thing which remains really consistent is the passion with which you see things and the darshan behind it. How do you look at seeing?
So, the question that you're asking is a painful question to begin the conversation with, because it's a very fundamental question to the whole photographic process. Seeing is not just a a physical activity because it is you are looking at the through the viewfinder when you take a picture. Seeing also involves projection, जिसे हम दृष्टि कहते हैं in our cultural thought. It's not just a simple term of looking. Seeing is very different. So there is looking and there is seeing. Seeing involves the faculty of your intellect, the faculty of your intellect as well as your consciousness, fused with the eye, with the physics of image, how image is accepted by the eye and how it's replicated by or understood by the brain. So when the process of looking, I call it the process of looking, when it is fused with the intellect, understanding what is being seen and incorporating its own impression on that, then looking becomes an act of seeing. So it is something like दृष्टि. दृष्टि में जब बोध जुड़ जाता है तो दर्शन हो जाता है. तो दृष्टि से दर्शन तक का जो सफ़र है वो मेरे मत से, मेरी समझ से, it is the most fundamental aspect of photography. To me, the image making is a consequential thing. The fact that you make an image, it's economics. It's purely getting into it's the brickwork. The real journey is the journey of taking your drishti to darshan. And the immensity of your question is just putting me in so many different streams of thought that the act of seeing, it has many layers to it. It starts with what you choose to see. The viewfinder of the camera is a rectangular space. Now, in the large matrix of life, where do you place that viewfinder? Where do you put that rectangular space? What do you frame? Now, that constitutes an element of choice. That choice is based on a lot of things, a lot of calculations, a lot of mathematics, a lot of emotional, turmoil inside. A lot of permutations and combinations lead to that act of a choice of what you frame. And that frame then becomes your drishti. That frame also becomes a mirror for you to project yourself. Because what you choose also chooses you, also defines you in a particular way. Such a deep thought. Yeah, because your act of choosing is also an act of you making a choice for a particular reason. And when you combine those things over a large period of time and you begin to see the choices where a photographer places his eye, begins to actually define his own self.
So Bandeep ji, which is why I asked you, in the last 30 years, I'm sure the child artist in you, when you saw that lady, sprawling grains on her terrace, what has really changed in that drishti from then and now? Of course, there is a common consistency.
Oh yes, definitely. So in your a fundamental thing also that is happening in the process of seeing is the act of silencing. When you put your frame on something, you're also putting away a lot of things. The act of removing a lot of things, editing a lot of things out is also a part of what you choose to frame and what you choose to see. Now, what it also simultaneously creates, it also creates a channel of receiving, whereby the scene that is happening outside is also being received by your eye to begin with, but at a larger level, it's also what is making the image in your mind is also an act of receptivity. Now, that is a very, very, very interesting thing, because that brings to a very essential core concept that I have been grappling a lot. Do you really take a photograph, or do you actually receive a photograph? There is, you are a witness to a large number of things happening. Certain things happen for you in certain situations where things are completely out of your premeditated experience or premeditated understanding of that particular scene. You are photographing let's put it in a very rudimentary way, you're photographing a beautiful woman. And suddenly a gust of wind comes and a particular hair just blows across the face, creating a perfect foil to the perfection of the face. And it enhances the beauty of the face manifold. Where does that hair breeze come from? Where does that serendipitous activity happen? And that is something over time, over years, I have learned to accept it as an act of grace that happens when you are in any profession, in any sort of prolonged engagement with anything, be it any kind of sadhana, be it photography, be it music, be it writing, any kind of thing. There is a beautiful term that describes it. It's called amad. When something happens, you receive something beyond what was in the conceived mindset. So that also comes as a part of your experience and part of your practice of photography. That to recognize and to understand and to be grateful for those moments of reception is a fundamental shift that has happened from the mere act of taking a photograph. You went into a photograph with the mindset and the gusto of making a photograph, creating a photograph. ये मैंने खींचा, ये मैंने shoot किया. To a thought process which says, I have received this. It's a big shift.
It's a huge shift,
Yeah,
and which is why when we've been friends on Facebook for a long time, and of course, our generation really looks up to you for the body of work that you have created. But what really caught my attention was Bhasm Ang. And what you're speaking right now, Bandeep ji, doesn't come from the place of an artist only. It comes from a deeply spiritual person. To accept the fact कि हम इस जीवन में दृष्टा भाव में हैं और हमें शायद दृष्टा भाव में रहकर ही चीज़ों को आप कह रहे हैं रिसीव करना है, मैं कह रही हूँ चीज़ों को होने देना है. ये बहुत डेप्थ की बात है. How did Naga Sadhu, that project, how did it happen to you? It is ongoing, as I hear from you.
So again, we come to the same thing, that do you actually it's a journey, it's a process where there is partly the effort from your side and partly it's an act of what comes to you, what you are receiving. Again, there are thousands of things, thousands of subjects in the world. Something that particularly draws you is an act of, something like as mysterious as love. How it happens, you don't know. Where it happens, you don't know. But it happens mysteriously and then it transforms you. So just like that, the Naga Sadhu project happened in a very, very beautiful way. What happens is, I firmly believe, and over time I've started to accept this and believe it more and more, They say that what you truly seek is also seeking you.
Oh, absolutely.
And when I first went to the Kumbh and experienced the Kumbh, 2013, the Mahakumbh, and so for the Shahi Snan in the morning, my first experience in the morning at 4 o'clock when the procession of the Naga Sadhus comes, was just to see the euphoria and the sheer grandeur of what are completely naked sadhus, bereft of any material gains, bereft of any opulence in that sense. Yet, what the roar that went up in the crowd, the fascination of people for them, and it just was a mesmerizing moment. It was never articulated as a desire, but desire has a beautiful way of appropriating, or rather, annexing something inside you, a space within your being, and it eats into that and creates a kind of a hollow inside you. That's how desire functions. It has a way of creeping inside you in the most unguarded of moments. In the moment of this extreme jubilation and celebration and euphoria all around of the Nagas running towards for the Shahi Snan, the visual, in those semi-dark conditions, dawn hadn't properly broken out, the lighting of the external lights was there, and in a silhouetted crowd, one figure of a Naga sadhu with his jatas held like this, flowing through this darkness, lit by the lights. I mean, it's a magical moment. And I couldn't see his feet because he was on a horse. But because the horse was moving, he appeared just gliding through the crowd like this. It was a mesmerizing moment. I'm now recalling it. I didn't even think about it. It's just embedded inside me like an impulsive thing that happened to me. Now, something as minute, have you heard of the term called butterfly effect? Where just the wings of a butterfly, can create a cataclysmic storm somewhere else. So, ये छोटी सी activity, it just lodged inside me in a deep desire to know who these sadhus are. Just a deep desire to know them. And another moment in the same Kumbh was I was in an akhada and I saw this tall, 6 feet tall Naga sadhu, 6.5 feet tall, just on the phone, completely in a naked condition. And he was very articulate, He was speaking good English and was very articulate in expressing himself, just talking on the phone. And I was mesmerized looking at him, looking at his, demeanor, looking at his ease with his body, looking at his ease being completely without clothes, surrounded by a multitude of people. And it just fascinated me. Stray visuals connecting together to create a big desire inside me that wasn't even articulated. It just was seeded inside me, perhaps. 2019, the next Kumbh. No, after 2013, it was the 2019 Kumbh, yeah. So 2019 Kumbh, I get a chance to photograph the Naga sadhus by a very dear friend of mine who is also a guru and who happens to be one of the Mahamandaleshwars of the Juna Akhada. So he invites me to come. Would you like to photograph
And you had no conversation to
I
him
had
prior
no
to.
conversation
You didn't
prior.
even like discuss it in the.
No discussion, nothing. And for me, it was, calling that was, and that old memory,
What
and
happened then when you got that call? What went inside your
nothing,
mind?
nothing, because it just was, again, as I'm saying, these are not moments that, have a cinematic aura to them. There's nothing, there's no background music, there's no dramatic moment. These are subtle things that happen inside you. And these subtle things, as I say, the word butterfly effect, they create these huge storms inside you which you're not aware of. And when you start on that journey, and it's only on hindsight, when you see the unfoldings of that. Even when I started photographing Naga sadhus, I set up a small studio inside in a corner. I was given a space in the Juna Akhada to set up a small space, and I started photographing the sadhus there. And but even when I was photographing, this was not articulated that this would be Bhasmang one day and this would be
Yes,
a.
yes. Hmm.
This just was a process, and it kept on happening. Over time, when that process finished, I spent about 15 days that year in that Kumbh photographing the sadhus. And once that happened, that also laid, as a body of work that I had done, I hadn't revisited. But when the Kumbh happened again this year, I that's the time in 2024, 2023, it started happening in my mind. Yes, this is something that needs to be, this is a story, this is a body of work that needs to be shown to the world, because people don't really know. And as the Kumbh happened, and as and how the events unfolded, and the misrepresentation that I saw of the Naga sadhus as primarily people who of this violent temperament, who are just running after people, beating them, and have, you know, uh, people who just are of very short temper and are, have this expletives on their mouth all the time. That this representation of those reels and that content getting viral, fueled in me a conscious desire to push, to really tell the story, that the tell my experience of how I had experienced the Naga sadhus, and to tell the story of them in a totality, in a more rounded way, as I had experienced. So that's what led to Bhasmang.
You are a journalist too. And this is my belief because I started as a journalist as well. I think people who consciously get into journalism are souls who are in perennial search. They don't even know what they are searching. And sometimes people find the medium, sometimes they don't. And there's no formula to being a successful journalist, so as to say. You produce work based on whatever you want to do. Sometimes it gets the recognition it does, sometimes it does not. However, what it does do to you, and this is my theory, and this is all my theory, I might not be correct at all in that. But sometimes in the process, what happens is that you begin to find yourself somewhere. Do you think Bhasmang is that project for you?
See, everything that you do, I don't make distinctions. Bhasmang, the expression of Bhasmang happened this year. Bhasmang as a project happened much before. So Bhasmang happened, the shooting process.
When you say much before, how much before?
I'm saying in the last Kumbh, when the primary body of work was created, the experience of Bhasmang happened, the visual experience happened in the last Kumbh. The contextualization of that experience happened this time. So, and the visual expression of putting together a body of work in prints happened in in the month of February. So, in all this, there is the Bhasmang is happening, but it's not happening at the same time as well. The cumulative experience is not happening at any single point of time. And at every point of time, I am involved in hundreds of different possible, expressions of what I'm doing. There's assignments happening at the work level. There is parallel projects happening at the same time. There is thought happening for something else. Some casual function at home is to be photographed. There is learning happening at the same time. So nothing stands out in singular importance or significance to say this is the fundamental shift moment in my life. Those shift moments are happening in various stages at different levels of work. So even while I'm photographing, even while I'm holding Bhasmang as an exhibition, these are milestone moments for an external viewer to look at your life. The milestone moments in your life can be something very, very, very simple. Something that may not even lead to big photographs. Something that trigger a thought process that is more intricate than anything that is visibly, magnificent or, for everybody else to see. Recently, just about 15 days back, I was in the morning, I entered my room and I saw through the doorway in the balcony, a falcon had come and just sat in our balcony. Now I instinctively photographed that falcon with my mobile phone, and then he kept on sitting. And then I took out my camera and I began photographing that falcon. Pictures are very simple, straightforward pictures of a falcon sitting on the balcony. But the meditation process, it started inside me. Why is he here? Why is a falcon in a residential society in the middle of a metropolitan area? Why is a falcon here? Oh, is it a falcon, or is it some soul that has come to visit? Now these processes are huge. Now that image of that falcon sitting in our balcony is not going out of my mind. So what I'm trying to tell you is that moment represents a bigger thought process in terms of my growth or my engagement with a visual process than probably printing a 10-feet image of a Naga sadhu and displaying it. What I'm trying to explain is not trying to diminish the question that you are saying, but what I'm trying to completely tell you that for a photographer, for a person like me, the journey is somewhere else. There's a beautiful song by Gurdas Man, in which it's a very popular song. It's called Tere Ishq da Gidda Penda Ni Tere Ishq da Gidda Penda. So in which he explains it beautifully. I don't know why I thought of this, but it just came to my mind. He says, one of the most beautiful things about that song, he describes what a ashik is not. He says ki ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਲੜ ਕੇ ਹੱਥ ਡਾਂਗਾਂ ਸੋਟੇ ਫੜ ਕੇ ਕੋਈ ਆਸ਼ਿਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਮੋੜਾਂ ਉੱਤੇ ਖੜ ਕੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਕੁੜੀ ਦਾ ਪਿੱਛਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਕੋਈ ਆਸ਼ਿਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣ ਜਾਂਦਾ and then he suddenly, after describing these things, what an ashik is not, he suddenly goes into a different tangent and says, ashik da kar dur sunida, bulle shah kenda. Now, ashik da kar dur sunida, it's a beautiful term, that the path of a lover is a very different path Bulle Shah says. Now, it goes into a very different trajectory. So that's exactly that, a photographer, the path sometimes is very different from what are the visual milestones of that path.
I've been wanting to put out this wish for a really long time. I really hope that Bhasmang never gets over. I hope that you continue to carry that forward and you keep moving on that journey. Because I also believe in a lot in Punarjanma. I don't know if you believe in Punarjanma. बट जो आप कह रहे हैं कि ये इस मोमेंट की बात नहीं है, ये आप 2013 की बात कर रहे हैं, दैट टाइम इट हैपेंड. मैं कह रही हूँ वो पता नहीं सोल लेवल पे, एनर्जी लेवल पे वो कब हुआ,
कहाँ पे वो, कौन सी कॉलिंग है और कौन सा आपके अंदर कौन सी चीज को पूर्ति मिल रही है बाय एसोसिएटिंग विद. तो इसके बारे में मैंने जिक्र भी किया है कि in the process of articulating my thoughts about Bhasmang, I wrote that I am always drawn to any acts of any being, who is on the path, who is on a quest for something. So I'm always instinctively drawn towards those people, those journeys, those instances where I see it happening, be it sadhus, be it fakirs, be it monks in a monastery. I'm extremely drawn towards these personas, the fact that they are in the quest of something larger than themselves, and that quest is not a material quest, is something that fascinates me. Why it is fascinating? Probably because it mirrors something of that quest within myself as well. And or probably it's my attempt to vicariously live that life, to be on that journey vicariously by observing it, by recording it, by documenting it. So कौन सी इच्छा कहाँ पे एक्सप्रेस हो रही है, I don't know, but it is a path. It is a path and it is a journey. It is a process of coming back to your first question. It is a process of seeing. It is a process of seeing where you are choosing a subject to experience through the silence and the mantra of a camera. The frame of the camera becomes your mantra, becomes your chant, becomes your... See, in a chant, what do? There is a limited phrase, limited phonetic sound that you continue to repeat again and again and again because it creates a vibrational shift inside you. It opens a vibrational portal inside you. Exactly the same. Now that is physical. This is visual. It's the same thing. The camera, the definition of the frame, the focal length of the lens are the meter of this visual mantra. You are using this, placing it on a reality, placing it on an experience to look at it again and again and again, to experience something and allowing a connect to happen. And maybe through that process of seeing, experience something in a very, very deeper way.
So when you photograph, say, politicians or actors for that matter, or any artist, do you get a similar experience, or do you always immerse yourself with this kind of intensity in the craft?
I wish I could, but it doesn't happen all that at the time. Most of the time, also when you're doing a professional assignment and you're photographing politicians and film actors, mostly as a requirement to a professional purpose. These are pictures to illustrate a story or visuals that are needed for a particular purpose. But again, even in that process, your practice of seeing through the camera doesn't change. So maybe your mental engagement may not happen that much. Oftentimes, the time constraint is there. You are not in your own free space to do that at your own. It's a very contractual space. The agreement to of the photographic of creating the photographic image, it's a very contracted agreement of
Okay,
time.
let me rephrase it. Say a Naga Sadhu project, for that matter, is an ongoing project. It's something which comes from your inner calling. But say photographing a politician that you do not like personally, because at the end of the day, we are all voters also. How do these instances, which are not just for politicians, any experience for that matter, we just discussed prior to this about you going to Nasik and shooting a beekeeper, and the fascinating journey it created in your own mind. Instances like this which throw you out of your comfort zone, how does it feed the artist in you, which is out there for a larger quest of, say, doing a project like you are invested in?
Shubhrasta, at the level at which we are having this conversation, the answer to that is not a simplistic answer. Firstly, the politician or an actor. So let me break it down again. I was telling you, it's a very contracted agreement. The space is it's a contract that you'll get 5 minutes or you'll get 10 minutes to do this shot. So most of the time you are also looking at the mechanics of creating photography with that. Your lighting has to happen, this thing has to happen, your setting has to be right, composition has to be right. So in that, most of the time you don't get an actual time to see. You are actually just creating a visual you're creating a visual rather than actually making a picture or getting into the process of seeing as you are getting in the process of seeing when you're doing something very different at a personal level, at a personal project level. But even when you're doing that, because the moment you put your eye to the camera, there is a certain zone effect that happens. You get into a zone, and that zone happens much deeper when you are in your personal space and when you are more focused and when you're driven by your own time and your own passion. Whereas in a space where it is more professional and more rushed up, but the process is the same. The habit is the same. So whether a cricketer plays a T20 match or a test match, certain things don't change. His stance doesn't change. The way he holds a bat doesn't change. So the way you look through the camera doesn't change. So you immediately start, while you're also shooting, you also begin to observe. And there are beautiful moments when after years and years that you actually begin to see through a person. And what I have seen through a lot of politicians is not so much the impressions that we carry. They don't align with that. I have seen people with a lot of hard work inside them, people with a lot of conviction, speaking with a lot of conviction, people with a lot of drive and truth inside them. The warping effects of what the politics unfolds as, those are warps that happen in the space of conversations and the space of analysis. But looking at a person through the camera incisively, creates very, very different impressions. And those different impressions surprise you also sometimes. This is not what I thought about this person. This is not what I was expecting to see. You see through vulnerabilities. You see through certain core truths about a person, which the projection of a person in the outward space, in the social space, is not there. Because you are seeing very intently. And when you're seeing without that baggage. You have isolated all that and you are just seeing. So it's a very, very different process. It's not a simple answer to that. A lot of politicians who I probably would not, would have a different opinion while reading about them or while discussing about them, that has changed by just looking at them through the camera and listening to them, hearing them speak. I'm sometimes in awe. And sometimes I have actually seen, when I've seen young politicians, I've seen their trajectory happening in front of my eyes, that this person is headed for a certain greatness that will happen. Certain politicians who I have photographed at a very young, at the initial MP, the first time MP state, and I knew looking at them that they will be a cabinet minister. This person is headed to be there. And it has happened. So, my impressions, same thing happens with actors. Actors, it happens reverse most of the time. You see through the construct, the aura. You cut through that and you see the human. It almost is like a deconstruction of the cinematic hero or the heroine. You almost see a very different person there.
Bandeep ji, you are equally good with words, and this comes also from the posts that you have put on Facebook, or the way you explain, even right now, the way you explain. It comes from a deep reverence to the medium of words as well. So while you are, of course, an expert in looking, seeing, drishti, darshan, words, please correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm gauging is words are also a meditative process for you. Do you read a lot?
I don't read that much, but I read very intensely. But what I read very intensely. I can go into ecstasy reading something. I feel it so much. I flip the adage on its head. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. There are certain words that are worth 1,000 pictures. It happens. And a lot of time, certain writing, certain expression just puts me into a very, very visual space.
Can you give some examples of?
I'm deeply interested in haiku poetry. So haikus are almost visual in their, and very palpable in their structure and what they convey. So that leads me very strongly, and also for me, writing a haiku is akin to making a very intense photograph. So the house where we were staying earlier had a sembalka tree in front of us, and 2 times a year, the pods would open and the cotton seeds would, flow all around. So the cotton pods release winter's burden to the summer breeze. A lot of times, I have just gone into visuals, gone into scenes, and just felt the certain words explain a scene for me most beautifully. I've written a series of sunset haikus. So this was on the way to Shimla once, and I saw a glorious sunset. And this was in Hindi. Hey Shivnuma. Hey Shivnuma. तुम्हें रंगों का रक्त आज फिर क्षमा. हे शिवनुमा, तुम्हें रंगों का रक्त आज फिर क्षमा. Another sunset in Uttar Pradesh, in Maihar, in a village, in a beautiful place called Amaria, which had mango trees. There's this beautiful sunset with all those small clouds, catching the sunlight, and then they being reflected in the water. भागते चोर की गठड़ी, भागते चोर की गठड़ी, आम की डालियों पे तिर गई, सब अशर्फियां बिखर गई.
This takes me back to the original experience which you shared about. Somehow that I haven't seen that photograph.
So, I mean, so this was a visual. This is a visual.
Yeah.
So the words and visuals interchange. They just come together. It does. I do not make. For me, the differentiation does not exist. And that happens in course of practice of whatever thing that you are practicing. So if you are on the path of seeking, every act that you becomes an extension of that path. You are, when you take a visual, it becomes that thing. When you eat, it becomes that thing. When you सब चीज़ों में फिर उसी चीज़ की, उसी क्वेस्ट की, उसी इंटेंसिटी की, उसी सेलेक्टिव विजुअलाइजेशन और रिसेप्टिविटी की झलक आ जाती है उसमें. आप उसी तरह से उसको एक्सपीरियंस करने लगते हैं, उसी ढंग से उसको रिसीव करने लगते हैं. आप वर्ड्स को भी रिसीव कर रहे हैं, बिकॉज वर्ड्स आर नॉट constant. The same thing when you will read in a particular state of mind, it wouldn't matter to you. It would be nothing. It is how you are aligned to those particular words in that particular day, in that particular moment, that, a perfect amalgamation happens, a perfect unison happens. That's receptivity. That's again a gift. Ahmad, wahan pe bhi.
How open are you to receive?
Yeah, how open are you to receive? Flavors, food, tea. Tea is a big thing for me, huge thing. So I have my entire cabinet full of different kinds of teas.
So what kind of tea do you like? Like the milky?
No. That is chai. That is not tea.
Oh,
I don't call it tea. So tea is to me...
Good that you qualified it.
Tea for me is only leaf teas and the teas that are brewed and where the flavor is coaxed out of the tea leaf through heat and patience. So that completely different. How the tea releases its flavor, how you receive that flavor, how you interpret it inside. It is the same thing as photography, same thing as reading. It's no different. It's just, Gurbani, there's a beautiful line, जो बूझो तो सब कुछ मूल, जो सूखम वही स्थूल. At one level, the micro and the macro are the same thing. Ya pinde sa brahmande. What is inside, your body is outside, the microcosmos is the macrocosmos. So it's all the same. Everything coalesces into one another. So for me, the journey has been to come back to your first question again, because it is not leaving me. From starting to photograph to the camera as a tool for taking pictures, to camera as a tool for understanding life and meditating on life, that is the shift.
I was very conscious about not, exploring this thread. But somehow it has happened. And as you said, it's all about what you intrinsically want. The whole idea, अभी आपने गुरबानी से एक कुछ शब्द कहे और फिर आपने संस्कृत से कुछ कहा, और वो सब तंत्र ट्रेडिशन की तरफ इंगित करते हैं. Somehow I've become deeply fascinated with the philosophy of Tantra. And the entire conversation that we have had till now, I think एक वही तंतु है जो शायद सब कुछ जोड़ता है, जोड़ रहा है और शायद आगे भी जोड़ेगा. इसी से मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाहती हूँ कि जो नए बच्चे हैं, जो फोटोग्राफी को एज अ प्रोफेशन अपनाना चाहते हैं, क्योंकि वो और कुछ नहीं करना चाहते. आई नो अ लॉट ऑफ kids in my family who have given up on everything because they want to pursue this. What advice would you give them with all that is happening in the domain of photography today?
So, see, this is an advice I actually give to a lot of youngsters and a lot of photographers. We are in a very, very difficult times. We are in a situation where, in a strange paradoxical situation, we are in a situation where there is more images being produced every day than probably were produced in the last few decades. 70,000 images get produced every second. Now, with that kind of profusion of images, there is an image numbness that happens. So, we are in this strange paradoxical situation where we are seeing but not looking, or looking and not seeing. You are having a profusion of images, but you're not looking at anything. You're just scrolling. There is more images that have been created. You have been equipped to create so much more images, but never has been a situation happened in history that the images that you are creating has had so little significance in terms of how they are perceived in terms of their authenticity. There is no era in history where you've been so equipped with technology to create beautiful images, and simultaneously no era in history where seemingly such beautiful images have been ignored as if they don't even matter. So we are in this age of this strange kind of paradox pertaining to images. And in this, what is happening, our imagery is being defined by algorithms. Imagery is not being produced out of a photographer's evolution of an image, or his visual, or his drishti, or his darshan, or his manan. Imagery is being produced as per an algorithm, as per an accepted norm of what is Instagrammable. It is a hugely limiting factor. Great photographers are producing images that are potentially dead, images that are absolutely brilliant to look at, but nothing more than that. I mean, they don't merit a second viewing or a third viewing. So that is the danger and the threat to anybody taking up photography today, to understand what is a good image. So I tell every youngster to please devote time to being a student of photography. Go back, look at the work of the masters. Read about them, what constituted an image. Look at the works, even if it may sound very cliched to look at the works of Cartier-Bresson or Ansel Adams or earlier masters, but you have to understand what constitutes a good image in your mind, rather than an algorithm pushing you away, rather than the likes defining what is a good image. Now, there is a concept called social image. What we have today on the Instagram and social media is something that it's a concept called social image. It's an image primarily meant for consumption in a manner, and consumption. I'm going a little in depth into this. See, your social media is actually, it's not doing any service to you. It's actually creating and reinforcing what you can call dopamine pathways. there is a gratification, instant gratification cycle that is deliberately created so that you are drawn into a habitual engagement with the medium. So your gratification process becomes, and the feedback process and the reward process is so automatic that becomes your primary engagement, and you are addicted to that process. And soon enough, without knowing, you subconsciously start producing image that gets more and more validation on these platforms. Now, validation will happen. Initially, it used to be organic validation when the picture that you have put out is seen by a lot of people. Now, a picture that you put out is not necessarily seen by a lot of people. It is filtered through an algorithm to reach out to a very small number of people. Yes. And it is designed in a particular way that you get limited engagement so that you seek to, your gratification is now being pulled back so that you engage more to get more. It's like a gambler who starts, after winning, starts losing money. So he's always reminded of the days when he won, and he engages more and more. So that process is happening through the social media channels. And if you tailor your expression and your creativity to suit those algorithms and those dopamine pathways, you are doing a great harm to your process. You don't even know what real imagery is. That is the biggest danger. And that is what I tell youngsters. Technique can be mastered. Rigor can come. That, incidentally, is another area I talk a lot about, but that we'll not talk today. But we're talking more about this. So it's very important to cut through this act which defines so much of what you create, and create imagery that speaks to you, that speaks to the canons of what good imagery is. I mean, it has different ways and different processes to do that, but that's not the subject of this.
So there are three images of yours which have really impacted me. One has been the recent portrayal of Taj Mahal that you did. Of course, Irfan Khan's portraiture. And some conflict-ridden images that you've done as a part of the journalistic exercise. Now, Bandeep ji, when you go in, say, conflict-ridden situations or situations where you're extremely happy with, an image that you create, like that of Irfan Khan, of course, at a particular moment in time when you're putting, when you're clicking the photograph, there's a journey behind it, and you've done it. How do you dissociate yourself, your personality, your emotions from what is happening right in front of you? Is it important to dissociate?
So dissociation is built into the very act of photography.
But then how do you create something like a bhasmang?
So there is a dissociation and an association that is parallel. It happens parallelly.
Sorry, I'm prodding you more on this, because how do you decide this is a level at which, because see, a project like Bhasmang, for instance, it takes everything out of you. You might be fulfilling every other duty as a professional, as a husband, as a father, as whatever capacities you are engaged with in the world. It requires absolute association with that one supreme, whatever you call it. And then there are projects where your heart, your emotions just completely go out, and you have to draw back to be able to.
There is there, and but that exists everywhere in every project. See, there is singing, they say, is a voice of the soul. You express your soul through your singing. But you have the the limitations and the grammar of the rag in which you operate and express yourself. Likewise, there is a grammar for photography, as in language, there is a grammar. So, the grammar of photography is that between you and the complete tactile experience happening in front of you, there is the camera. It is, while it is a device for you to look deeper, it is also a device that separates you from a complete immersive experience into what is happening in front of you. That is a very important thing, because that gives you perspective. That always keeps you in the zone of a perspective, in the distance of a perspective. For example, to take any image, it's not just, instinctive pressing of the shutter. There is a lot of calculation, there's a lot of physics happening. Focus is there, your compositional elements are there, design elements are there. There is imagery happening. You have to decode the light in terms of the metering of the camera, how much to expose, what is the aperture, what is the shutter speed that you have to keep, how do you freeze the light, what if you're using artificial lights. There's so much calculation that is happening, but that is happening at another level. That is, by practice and by years of experience, that becomes instinct. But it still is there. It's a limit. It's the meter in which you are functioning. That is very, very important. And that is important because your immersive experience into anything that is happening in front of you creates extreme subjectivity. And extreme subjectivity is a kind of a blindness in certain ways. Is very limiting, because then you begin to experience the reality only through your emotive response to that particular situation. Emotive response can be very limited to what your experience. Coming to Bhasmang, there is a Naga sadhu who's sitting at you, who, while you are photographing you, is cursing you. Right? Now, if you are emotively involved in that situation, you are viewing his curses as an attack on your ego. And your ego responds to that situation. He may not just curse you, he may pick up something and throw at you. Now, that is an emotive response to that, a reaction to that would completely be antithetical to the act of looking at that person. Now, this is an extreme situation, I'm saying. In a case of a tragedy or something very tragic happening in front of you, as has happened for me in situations where I've seen people die in front of me, you get so emotionally involved and your shock of the situation wants you to drop the camera and reach out to them in every possible way. Your humanity takes over. You're being a photographer. And those are moments also that happen. For many photographers, especially photographers in the space of photojournalism, this is a very natural thing that happens. Now, that's not a desired situation. That's not a desired situation that you, at that time, give up your photography and respond to that particular thing the way your emotion is responding to that. I photographed, young girls who were trafficked. And I was doing their portraits. My heart leapt out to them. I just wanted to drop the camera and just hug them and just console them. But you kept on taking pictures at that point of time. That level of detachment is a very good thing. Now pull back into a larger thing of spirituality. Your spiritual processes, meditative processes also create that level of detachment. You would have heard meditation techniques where you are where you are supposed to pull out of your thought processes and imagine as a third person viewing your own self. Camera does that for you ready made. Already puts you in that detached perspective.
You have really invested everything into what you do and it shows. बहुत कम, जैसे एक जेम कुद्जी का जो बॉडी ऑफ वर्क है वो वैसा ही मुझे लगता है that man has given everything to writing. I mean there are Nobel laureates and people who get awards and all of that, but ये बड़ी छोटी चीज़ें हो जाती हैं when you start looking at the.
But I don't really think मैं फोटोग्राफी कर रहा हूँ. मुझे
यही तो अच्छी बात है आपके साथ.
मुझे ये
Which is why
ये एहसास ही नहीं होता कि मैं फोटोग्राफी कर रहा हूँ. इनफैक्ट बहुत बार जब मैं कैमरा लेके शूट करता हूँ तो द एक्सपीरियंसिंग ऑफ समथिंग, द कंपल्सिव एक्सपीरियंसिंग ऑफ समथिंग दैट हैपन्स, दैट इज द मोस्ट एक्साइटिंग थिंग अबाउट फोटोग्राफी फॉर मी. अभी मैं जब बाहू को, मेरे बेटे को जब छोड़ने गया राजस्थान में बिट्स पिलानी में, तो वहाँ हम लोग एक किसी की हवेली में रुके. तो शाम को पीछे वहाँ पे बैट्स आते हैं और शाम को बैट्स उड़ते हैं और शुभ रास्ता इतने बड़े बड़े बैट्स, इतने बड़े बड़े, दिल्ली में हमको इतने इतने दिखते हैं, वो इतने बड़े बड़े बैट्स एंड दे आर जस्ट फ्लाइंग अराउंड इन रैंडम फैशन. मैं कितनी देर उन बैट्स को फोटोग्राफ करता रहा जस्ट बिकॉज द एक्ट ऑफ. अगर मैं सिर्फ खड़े रहता तो मैं क्या करता, मेंटली उनको एक्सप्लेन कर लेता कि ये बैट्स हैं, ये उड़ रहे हैं, रैंडम हो रहा है. आप देखते ही नहीं हो, आप एक्सप्लेन कर देते हो हर एक चीज़ को. फोटोग्राफी के थ्रू आप एक्सप्लेन नहीं करते हो आप, क्योंकि वो हो रहा होता है, उसको आप विजुअली कनेक्ट हो जाते हो उसके साथ और यू आर experiencing it as it should be experienced, as a visual should be experienced.
In fact, ये रिकॉर्डिंग चल रही है ना, बहुत बढ़िया. In fact, ऐसा था कि आपसे बात करने के पहले while I was meditating on something, I realized महाभारत में संजय ने सुनाया है ना उनको धृतराष्ट्र को, और वो मेरे लिए फोटोग्राफी की एक्सपीरियंस ही है.
एग्जैक्टली. और वो संजय डिटैच्ड है गीता से,
बिल्कुल.
संजय वहाँ पे सी दैट डिफरेंस. संजय अगर वहाँ खड़े होते तो गीता कभी एग्जिस्ट ही नहीं करती. इट इज ओनली थ्रू संजय दैट गीता एग्जिस्ट टुडे, बिकॉज इट्स नरेटेड, इट्स विजुअली डॉक्यूमेंटेड, इट्स डॉक्यूमेंटेड इन सम फॉर्मेट.
मतलब आपकी अब जैसे इरफान खान का जो आपने पोर्ट्रेट किया और उसके बाद आपने लिखा, वो दोनों अलग एक्सपीरियंसेस हैं. वो फोटोग्राफ इतना अमेजिंग है, इतना आइकॉनिक है, इतना कल्ट लेवल है कि उसके बियॉन्ड कुछ भी जरूरत नहीं पड़ती. आपके अपने शब्द भी जरूरी नहीं है, बिल्कुल जरूरी नहीं है. लेकिन होता क्या है कि देन यू ऑल्सो वांट टू नो द पर्सन हु इज डूइंग इट, एंड देयरफॉर यू रीड, एंड व्हेन यू रीड यू रियलाइज ये व्यक्ति तो शब्दों का भी उतना ही बढ़िया चितेरा है. नो, बट आई एम नॉट सेइंग दिस बिकॉज यू आर हियर. इट्स एक्चुअली, एंड anybody, this is my firm belief that any artist or anybody who is doing anything with full conviction and complete immersion has that effect. कोई भी प्रोजेक्ट वो उठाए, कोई भी
मेरे कुछ पैरेलल इंटरेस्ट्स हैं जो कि मैं उतने ही वैसे ही करता हूँ, उतने पैशन से करता हूँ, लेकिन वो उस चीज़ में आते ही नहीं हैं. जैसे चाय. अच्छा. I really love making tea.
But how beautifully you talked about tea कि वो उसको आपको पेशेंस के साथ और हीट के साथ ब्रू करना होता है. एंड यू वेरी राइटली सेड सेम इज, मैं कनेक्ट ही करी थी कि फोटोग्राफी भी तो वही है ना.
कुकिंग बाप रे, इट इज मैजिकल. इतना खूबसूरत चीज़ है, इतनी स्पिरिचुअल चीज़ है वो. मतलब फोटोग्राफी और कोई चीज़ उसके आसपास भी नहीं आती जो नॉर्मल कुकिंग है. बट अगर वही चीज़ आप अवेयरनेस के साथ करें,
और किसी दिन आप मूड चेंज करके कर दें कि आप राजमा बनाते समय आपका मूड ऑफ हो और उसमें बना रहे हो कि मुझे आज बनाना है.
एंड आई फील बहुत डिफरेंस होता है, इतना मज़ा आता है, इतना ट्रांसफॉर्मेटिव होता है कुकिंग. देन आई ऑल्सो पेंट, तो दैट ऑल्सो इज सो ब्यूटिफुल. उसका एक अपना उसकी एक रिदम है और वो उसकी बहुत बड़ी चीज़ है जो मन में बहुत बड़ी वो इस लाइफ टाइम की तो डिज़ायर है, सिंगिंग.
You do sing?
No, I can't sing. No, and but God has given उसका एक पैरेलल मुझे मैं सुन सकता हूँ. And the intensity with which I can listen to music is amazing. It just तो वही उसको फोटोग्राफी का भी फ्लिप साइड ये है कि कुछ लोग ऐसे होते हैं कि जो फोटोग्राफ्स को इतने इंटेंसली देख पाते हैं और एक्सपीरियंस कर पाते हैं, वो एक कंप्लीट स्किल है कि किसी एक चीज़ से एट द एंड आप रसिक है ना, रसिक इज द वर्ड ना. आपके
Yes.
आपका कल्चर
Absolutely.
आपको आप रसिक से ही तो आप हमारा कल्चर उस चीज़ को एक्सप्लेन करता है. आपका रसिक होना इज द फर्स्ट स्टेप टुवर्ड्स बीइंग अ स्पिरिचुअल बीइंग,
Towards being human.
तो वो जो उस चीज़ में से रस का अनुभूति करना, वो आप एक्टिवली थ्रू द प्रोसेस कर रहे हैं या आप रिसीव कर रहे हैं उसको उस एक्ट से. सेम चीज़ है. आप खाना अच्छा पका रहे हैं या आप खाना अच्छे से खा रहे हैं विद कंप्लीट रिसेप्शन टू दैट. तो मेरा गाने की इतनी वो है, लेकिन ये यहाँ पे मैं उसको एक बहुत बड़ा गिफ्ट मानता हूँ कि मैं जब सुनता हूँ तो मुझे इतना म्यूज़िक इतना इस लेवल तक टच करता है. दैट इज़ ब्यूटिफुल.
Thank you so much, Bandeep ji. I want to continue this conversation for eternity. But I think this is a moment to take a pause. Thank you so much for giving your time, and thank you so much for sharing all that you shared, because these are not just punctuations in the kind of work that you are doing. These are elaborate grammars in how you photograph people, situations, circumstances. I think you've done a huge service to our time by creating the body of work that you have done, and we will ever be grateful to you for the immense passion with which you take up any project. Thank you so much for.
No, thank you so much. And it is very, very important that practitioners are given a space and platform, to pull out themselves from the act of what they are doing and reflect upon that. It allows articulation to happen. A lot of things that I have said today probably I have never said before in my life, because there's a platform to say that, because you are sitting and you are receiving it in a particular energy, and so you expressing. I fear that it has become a little too gobbledygook. But it's important that these articulations happen around practices. Articulation happens around processes, so that there is a contextualization of why we do things, why we see the way we see, and why it is important to do so.
अपने समय को और अपने आप को दृष्टा भाव से देखते हुए जीवन में रत रहना, मुझे लगता है ये एक बहुत बड़ी सीख आज बनदीप जी के साथ इस संवाद से मैं अपने घर लेकर जा रही हूँ. आई एम श्योर आपको भी ये कॉन्वर्सेशन अच्छा लगा होगा. आप और किन लोगों से मिलना चाहते हैं आप ज़रूर बताएं. चैनल सब्सक्राइब करें, प्लीज़ सब्सक्राइब टू द चर्न, एंड look forward to hearing your comments. Thank you.